everybody, Jolt here from the ThetokenMinorities, and I have a March Madness tournament battle here for you today. This match was a loser's bracket quarterfinals match. It was me against our fellow token minority Bacon/Flint. It was actually a really good match, a little bit on my side as far as hacks is concerned, which is kind of a new thing. I don't get that very often. But before we jump into the battle, I'm going to give a brief team preview. Basically looking at his team, I see the biggest threat to be Ferrothorn and a potential Dragon Dance Tyranitar. Ferrothorn is only a problem because it does have the potential to set up a lot of entry hazards, as does Klefki, and my team does not have a spinner or a defogger, so that's always a big problem whenever there's a lot of entry hazards up against my team. Plus, I only have one Pokemon, or two Pokemon, I guess, that have super effective moves against Ferrothorn. One being Heatran, which is a Choice Scarfed Heatran, which is something that I like to keep concealed until late in the game due to people just not expecting it anymore. It's great. And plus, Breloom may not be the best check to Ferrothorn because if it is the Rocky Helmet variant, I am not going to be enjoying taking Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet damage. I also see that Sylveon is going to be very important against his team because it's going to be a nice switch into Conkeldurr. It's going to be a good switch into Starmie as well. So yeah, and then looking at his team, I also see the Charizard as being a threat, as it is going to be most likely his Mega. I have to determine whether or not it's going to be Charizard X or Charizard Y. I am thinking it's going to be Charizard Y due to the structure of his team being primarily physical, aside from the Charizard Y. He does have the Starmie, but that would probably... yeah, I'm going to say that's going to be a Charizard Y. So yeah, that's really about it for the team preview. I do also see that Landorus is going to be a very important switch-in, especially against Tyranitar and against Conkeldurr, and actually against Klefki. So for the lead matchup, I am expecting him to try to counter my Breloom lead. I usually do lead Breloom with this team, and we play each other a lot, so he knows what I like to do. So I'm actually going to predict his prediction and lead off with a Landorus to counter the most likely Klefki lead. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Alright, so as I expected, he did lead with his Klefki, predicting my Breloom, and I led with my Landorus T, knowing that a powerful Earthquake can definitely take a good chunk of damage away from Klefki, and because Klefki does not have any form of reliable recovery, it's going to be great to get that thing reduced in HP as quickly as possible. I see that he's going to be a dual screen variant, which really is pretty standard, I would say. He sets up that Reflect to take the Earthquake, and then switches right into Ferrothorn, probably to set up his rocks as early as possible. And also here I noticed that he doesn't have leftovers, so this does confirm that it's going to be a Rocky Helmet Ferrothorn set, so I need to make sure not to be U-turning on it because that's really not worth the chip damage. So we both set up our Stealth Rocks on that turn, and then I go ahead and go into Breloom, knowing basically just scouting for what he wants to do. If he does want to go for a Leech Seed, Breloom can take it. If he goes for Power Whip, I can take it. If he goes for a Gyro Ball, it's going to hurt, but it's nice to know. It's very valuable information. So now, I guess scouting for the Gyro Ball, I go ahead and switch into Landorus, to reduce his attack, and two, just to sponge the hit in case he did go for the Gyro Ball. He instead just goes for Power Whip again, really trying to get rid of Breloom. That tells me that he hates Breloom, he wants it to be gone. So I'm going to keep that in mind and definitely try to keep Breloom around as long as possible. He goes for the Leech Seed on that turn and misses, which is a little unfortunate for him because that was some recovery that a Rocky Helmet Ferrothorn definitely needed. But luckily it does miss, which is nice for me, of course. I just go for an Earthquake on the following turn to get a little more damage on the Ferrothorn because I know as long as he doesn't have Leech Seed support and no leftovers, it's going to only be losing health, and that's, only good for me. I go into Breloom here predicting the Leech Seed again, and luckily he does make that play. And the Reflect wears off here, and I know that Ferrothorn is a huge threat to my team, so I don't care about the Rocky Helmet damage. I'm going to go ahead and go for an Adamant Breloom Mach Punch on the Ferrothorn. It does take it out with a critical hit, which did matter. I ran a calc and so did he. It would have lived with about 10%. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but it's okay because Breloom really isn't going to do much the rest of the match anyway, except be nice switch. I guess whenever I have an empty switch, I'll go into Breloom because it's my standard lead. But no matter, so I go ahead and go into Tyranitar here on the Starmie. This is actually a Mega Tyranitar, as it's the only potential Mega on my team. So that's kind of cool, I guess. It takes that Life Orb Ice Beam from Starmie relatively well. But I go ahead and switch into my Rotom here, expecting a Scald or a Surf, whatever he might want to do, but he decides to just go for a Rapid Spin, which is an okay play. I guess he really didn't want those rocks on the field, considering he has a Charizard in the back but I am just going to try to get those rocks up again later. That's no big deal to me. I actually really appreciate that he's taking Life Orb and sand damage by just trying to get rid of my rocks. So that's awesome, but he goes ahead and goes for a Psychic here on my Rotom, which I don't really agree with. I think there might have been a better play because Starmie was his best switch in on my Landorus. But no matter, he does do, excuse me, about 70 to 80% to my Rotom with that Psychic, and I go ahead and take it out with a Volt Switch. So that was a very beneficial play on my end. It's very nice to have that Starmie gone. That's only Rapid Spin support. So I'm just going to make sure I set up those rocks as soon as possible. And so yeah, he brings in his Klefki here to try to set up those screens again, which makes sense. This must be a light clay version of Klefki, which is fine. I'm just going to start pounding him with Mach Punches from Breloom just to bring him down as low as possible. I know that there's really no point in trying to spore the Klefki because that's the worst possible thing to spore at this point. He's going to get one of his screens up regardless, so I might as well just go ahead and try to take it out so we can't do it again later. I know that the purpose or the goal of his team is to set up screens with Klefki and then let Charizard sweep later. I do not want that to happen, so I am going to go ahead and remove the Klefki from play. He goes into Conkeldurr here, trying to scare me out with a Mach Punch, and I do predict that and go ahead and go into Sylveon, knowing that Sylveon basically is a perfect switch into Conkeldurr. It's not quite as perfect whenever it does have light screen support, because my Hyper Voice, which does have a few extra special attack EVs, as opposed to the standard 252 HP special defense set, my Hyper Voice is only going to do about, 30 to 40% as opposed to 60%. So yeah, he switches into Tyranitar here on my Wish, which I guess was a good prediction on his part, because a Hyper Voice would have done a lot of damage to that Tyranitar. But yeah, go ahead and pass the Wish to Landorus, knowing that it's pretty much a very safe switch into Tyranitar. Plus, I want to scout what kind of set he is, if he's a Dragon Dance set, if he's a Curse set, if he's a, I guess, Home Claw set. I never expected that, but I guess he said, Flint, said that he was not able to get a Dragon Dance Tyranitar before this match started. It was supposed to be Dragon Dance, but he only had Home Claws, so he went with that, which actually turned out to be very crucial in this match. If he had Dragon Dance Tyranitar, it would have been much more of a problem. So I switch into Rotom here just to scout for the Ice move so I can see if Landorus is going to be a solid switch into Tyranitar or not. He just goes for Stone Edge, so that tells me that he most likely does not have an Ice move. So that's very nice. That means Landorus will always be a solid check, really a counter for Tyranitar throughout this entire match. So that's going to make things much easier in the long run. He switches into Conkeldurr here, which was kind of a risky play. I don't really agree with that either, because I could have just as easily gone for an Earthquake on that turn. But I did just go for a Stone Edge, predicting his Charizard to try to come in here, because I don't believe rocks were on the field at this point. But I do go for the Earthquake on the following turn. I get a critical hit on the Conkeldurr. That did matter, and I'm really sorry about that. I guess I'm sorry. I mean, hacks happens to all of us. It's kind of unfortunate. I really wish there was a setting where we could turn off the hacks in the game, you know, to make it a lot more fair for everybody. But here I know that I'm in a very good position against Tyranitar, seeing as how his best move against me is Stone Edge. He does keep missing Stone Edge, which does hurt. I don't really think it matters too much, but the combination Ice Punch from Conkeldurr plus Stone Edge from Tyranitar would have done a lot of damage and could have potentially, definitely, taken out my Landorus. So that was game-changing, I will admit, but it does work out for me because I'm able to get off that Earthquake ×2 really on that Tyranitar, and I'm able to take it right out. So that is very nice to have that huge threat out of the way. It's not as much of a threat with Home Claws, but if it was a Dragon Dance set, it would have been, you know, a very big threat as always. So I go ahead and recover a little more health with leftovers, and he brings in that Charizard. This is the end of the match, so I do know that it's safe to bring in my Heatran, but I am going to go ahead and sacrifice the Landorus here to a Flamethrower, because I really have no reason to try to predict. If he did go for an Earthquake and take out my Heatran, I could be in a lot of trouble. So yeah, I go ahead and sacrifice Landorus. He hits me with a powerful Flamethrower boosted by Drought and by that incredible special attack that Mega Charizard Y has. I go into Heatran and hit him with that Choice Scarfed Ancient Power, and that will be the game. So that was a very good game. I really wish we didn't have some of those, you know, small hacksy sections here and there, but it was a fun match, a very worthy opponent for a losers bracket quarterfinals match. man, Bacon's coming a long ways. I don't know if you guys saw him whenever we did our monotype tournament, but he wasn't very good then, but he's a threat now, to say the least. So it's been fun to watch him grow. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this narration. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we hope you continue to enjoy all of our March Madness battles throughout this week. And with that in mind, I guess we will see you all tomorrow with another video from the tournament. Wah Buffett! See you guys.